Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I'll just go ahead and join the Good Morning train. Good morning. A little bit louder. As you can tell, I'm very excited. Good morning. All right. So today I actually want to talk a little bit more outside of the rocket science realm, but it's really the foundation of how I became a rocket scientist and how the rocket scientist community thrives, right, in the aerospace industry. So I really want to talk about the intersectionality of education and purpose. We all have our individual journeys of how we've traveled to this very spot that you're sitting in right now. I'll talk a bit about mine, but I really want to make this a conversation. So you're going to hear me talk for a good bit, but after that, I definitely want you to ask questions, to make comments. I really just want to hear your thoughts so we can have a really productive conversation. So my handy clicker, let's go ahead and get started. Let's blast off to purpose. So what we're talking about is how knowledge and resource equity propels us forward. Yep, so I went ahead and added some rocket puns in there. You're going to be hearing that throughout, so just bear with me. I have a passion, okay? All right, so in 2013, I walked into the doors of MIT. Now, for me, I had a mind full of hesitation and hope, as many can relate. As a student, we all suffer from this thing called imposter syndrome. So for me, I had a fear of failure, right? I had fears, oh my gosh, even before I walked into the doors of MIT, once I saw the letter. But when I walked into those huge, majestic, beautiful doors, that's when it really hit. So I had that hesitation, I had that fear of failure, but I also had that hope that I could persevere and graduate and succeed in life and do all of the different things that I've dreamed about doing for so many years. So coming from the little town of Mableton in Georgia, has anyone heard of Mableton? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Usually I get zero hands, but it's a little town outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm thousands of miles away from where I call home. I don't know anyone on the campus, and I'm just trying to figure it out. So as you can imagine, during my freshman year, I had this dream of becoming an aerospace engineer, but I wasn't performing as I had been performing for so many years prior to then. I was the top of my class. I was the top of my magnet program. I was, National Honor Society, Math Honor Society, Science Honor Society, Science Olympiad, all of those different accolades that all the students come in here with. So I thought that I could do it, despite my hesitation. But oh, the grades started coming in, and I saw that maybe I need to move back to Georgia immediately. So I had trouble studying. That's what I realized. So these grades are coming back. I know that I could do it, but for some reason, I don't know how to digest the material. And, I try and study in my dorm room. I try to study outside, student center, you name it. I was somewhere studying. But I guess I may have missed some of the put aside study spaces that you all provide, right, as part of MIT libraries. So thankfully, one day, an upperclassman told me to meet them at a space that I could really study and, absorb the material. So I was like, great. So I'm walking, and as freshmen also do, get lost. I'm walking in circles like, oh my gosh, where am I going? And I end up walking into this beautiful space. The architecture is amazing. I look at the ceiling and I'm like, the hesitation kind of leaves my body, right? Because I realize that I have been placed in this amazing space. So I must be okay academically, right? Like I could maybe do it. And it was Barker Library. It's just so beautiful, right? So I'm surrounded by all of these students looking so studious, and I knew that I could do it too. And I immediately sit down, and I kid you not, that day completely changed the trajectory of my academic career. I believe that to this day. So, this is 10 years ago, right? So I believe that to this day. And I am so happy to say that you all played a role in that by providing a space that's safe for students to come and study and gather and absorb all of that material that they have been hoping and dreaming for all of their lives. Now, for me, it started at the age of 11, okay? So that is when I decided to become an aerospace engineer. So imagine we're just talking about, I don't know, what, 7 years later, and I'm still holding on to that dream walking into MIT, and today I'm doing it. So look at that full scope of journey, right? So thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. So knowledge is power. We always hear that phrase, right? Knowledge is power, but what does that truly mean? So knowledge, as I like to see it, it is power, but how is that produced? So rocket pawn alert, okay? So in order to produce power or thrust, as we like to call it, it takes fuel, it takes a source. Okay, fuel and an oxidizer, but I won't go down the road. It takes a source. And where does that source come from? It comes from so many places. Now, I must say, when it comes to majoring in course 16 at Aerospace Engineering, a lot of those sources do come through academic journals and textbooks that you all happen to provide. So thank you for providing that source. And at the same token, it also comes from people from various different sectors of your life, not only professors in my case, but it was also staff members that actually had a really huge impact to my journey. And these staff members, I guess I kind of like to talk. So I had a chance to get to know quite a few people, but they were from various sectors of campus. I'm serious. So student center, finance, office, admissions, it didn't matter. For me, it was the connection. And I realized that the knowledge that they were pouring into me, they were the source that allowed me to produce thrust to then empower me forward. So what does that mean for students in general? It means that education is the knowledge that they receive, and they are able to then push their dreams forward too. And the sources that they do receive is their fuel. It is their fuel to allow them to go on their trajectory, whether they are traveling to Mars and beyond, or if they're just trying to travel up the street to work at one of these wonderful companies that's surrounded by MIT's campus. It's their fuel to propel them forward. Knowledge truly is power. And look at that. Who's that over there? Oh, so that's me during my undergraduate career at MIT. And as you can see, that knowledge was propelling me forward. That's actually me in my senior year. So I had that hesitation as a freshman, second guessing whether or not I could do it. And here I am with one of my final projects, and I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm holding this glider with all of the different altitude controls, and I am actually doing it. Wow. So imagine, okay, I have all of these different opportunities to learn about aerospace engineering, which is the reason of why I decided to join MIT. It was the courses that I took that provided me with that knowledge. It was the different resources that I received that provided me with that knowledge. It was different summer programs, also different externships, XYZ, that provided me with all of the knowledge that I needed to at least make it to this point. But I must say, it was really shocking. It was so shocking when I received that acceptance letter from MIT, and I'm looking at myself standing in that gymnasium, and I am flying that glider. It's a moment. So education is not just about the information that you receive, it is also about all of the different ways in which you discover yourself. So I talked about my academic journey and how I was learning in aerospace engineering. I went through unified engineering. Is anybody familiar with unified engineering? Okay, well, simply put, it's the weed out course, all right, for course 16. I know I'm on record for saying that, but it's so true. You literally have 4 courses wrapped into one. You have structural, you have propulsion as well. You have aerodynamics, and then you also have signal systems and control. So yeah, like I said, it's a weed out course. And I found that although I was learning so much information about aerospace engineering, that it was actually allowing me to discover who I am as a person. So how do I approach this course? How do I section out the time that's required to actually venture through this course and produce results, AKA a passing grade? How do I respond to the other aspects of life, right? So I've been talking about education, but I really need to dive into purpose. I realized that although I did have some sort of purpose to pursue aerospace engineering, what I really understood later down the road is that I have a real passion for people. I love people. And I realized this by delving deep into the other aspects outside of the classroom. It was my community. So, in my biography, you heard that I was co-chair of the Black Women's Alliance and co-chair of the Black Students Union. By joining these organizations, it allowed me to have a different perspective of my why. We always talk about the what, we talk about the how, but why is truly at the center of what we do, how we do it, and ultimately what is produced. So my why was people. And that is my purpose up until today. And I'm proud to say that my experiences at MIT is what allowed me to discover that. So I realized that I enjoyed planning all of these different activities that brought the community together. I enjoyed creating these letters of recommendations to bring over to MIT leadership in hopes of change for the African American community on campus as part of the Black Students Union. I enjoyed planning social activities for my dorm, right? I enjoy watching the effects of how people are impacted by what I do. My purpose is people. And I can say that those experiences and the people that surrounded me is what allowed me to come to that conclusion. So your impact it might seem small in that slight interaction with the student, but you have no idea how much your impact can feed someone else's purpose. So this is another point that I really want to hit on. Resources and exposure are key to developing goals and dreams. Now, we always talk about this in Rocket with the Fletchers, the organization that I founded with my husband, but I don't think it really hits until you're at a place in your career when you can look at the upcoming generations and how there's such a variety of pathways at which they're traveling. And some of them are having the resources and the exposure to even understand what an aerospace engineer is by high school, but many do not. So like I said, resources and exposure are key to goals and dreams. So imagine that you have a student who has never heard of the word aerospace engineering. They're undergoing their undergraduate career. They're trying to figure out their major. They never had the resources, even to this day, to even have a laptop to do their work. So they're having to borrow it, thankfully for MIT. There is a borrowing program that is so awesome with Wi-Fi and all of those different resources, but then also the exposure. So I mentioned that I was thinking about becoming an aerospace engineer since the age of 11. That was because there was exposure to tell me that there was a such thing as an aerospace engineer, because otherwise I would have never known. So I'm in elementary school and there's a company called Lockheed Martin. I work for Boeing, but Lockheed Martin always has a special place in my heart. They came to my elementary school with a program called LM Smart. And I'm in 4th grade. All I know is that I want to be a designer, maybe a scientist, a mathematician. I just want to make cool things. That's pretty much it. But they taught me about aerospace engineering. I was able to put all of those passions together and actually formulate a career at the age of 11. That was exposure. Yes, they provided resources too. I was able to get on my first flight simulator at the age of 11 because of that program. Did I become a pilot? No, I didn't. My eyesight was not good back then, not at all, right? So I decided to design them instead for everyone's safety. I have LASIK now, that's why I can see you. Otherwise, you'll see the thick glasses. But that was an exposure point. That was a resource point. And who is familiar with MITES, by the way? MIT's very own MITES. Okay, so MITES is a program that has been near and dear to my heart as well. And I have been a part of that program for about 4 years now, going on 5. And I have been able to teach students from a variety of backgrounds about aerospace engineering. I've been able to provide that exposure, and MITES time and time again, they provide those great resources and connections. So all of this to say that resources and exposure are key, and you should each be very proud of the critical piece that you play in that equation, because that does equate to dreams that become reality. So thank you all for that. This is like a thank you speech. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So finding one's purpose in life can be very daunting, right? There's so many different options, and there are so many things that you try that doesn't actually produce fruit, okay? You try things that you may not like. You think that you're into something, but it's just not it. But then you find that thing that sticks, that thing that produces results, that thing that impacts the people around you. And that's when you know that you have found purpose. Now you can see this big rocket right here, right? Yeah. So a question that I had for myself is, what is my purpose? So in order to figure that out, I've been focusing on becoming an aerospace engineer since 11. I'm in MIT at this point, undergrad, studying aerospace engineering. I'm doing summer programs catered to aerospace engineering. But it wasn't until I started working on this rocket was when I was able to really test out that question, which means that my sophomore year, I decided to do an internship, exciting internship. So this internship was actually for systems engineering on a highly classified program that I like to call the dungeon. There were no windows, okay? And I had to lock my phones and things outside of the room. And in this dungeon, I wasn't doing what I had been seeking to do for so many years. I was not. It was very different. I wasn't designing aircraft or spacecraft. At this point, I was doing something completely different. But oddly, it was in those conversations with those coworkers is where I did find the journey to my next internship. My next internship was as a rocket structural design and analysis engineer working on NASA's Space Launch System. So this hefty rocket here is the Space Launch System. Who has heard of the Space Launch System? We're gonna change that today, okay? But the Space Launch System is the largest, most powerful rocket ever built in launch, because we did launch. So I'll be talking about that a bit later into the presentation, and you will see that launch today as well. And that was the test that passed. I knew that that was my purpose, to work on this rocket, to be an aerospace engineer, to design, to build. But you know what? That was my technical purpose, right? Because I didn't forget about that other purpose that was so valuable to me, people. How can I incorporate that? So as a structural design engineer on that side, I was designing various parts of the rocket. Particularly, I was designing cryogenic parts of the upper stage of the rocket. So towards the top, right? Second stage, as you will. And cryogenic just means that it gets down to, something around the order of negative 297 degrees Fahrenheit to negative 423 degrees Fahrenheit, liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, respectively. So it was a critical parts that I was working on that were very sensitive, right? As they were undergoing their journey. And as a structural analysis engineer, I had to simply verify the structural integrity of those parts, like those parts that are getting that cold and having to deal with that heat and so many forces all around it. So technically, I have my purpose. This is fun. This is great. But I was at the computer so much, so the people part wasn't really coming in too much. So what does that mean? What did I do after that? Well, I had to change my trajectory. And there were a few folks that helped me do that. The power of mentorship. I tell you, to this day, mentorship, ooh, it plays a role in the career journey and really the journey of life. Now, here is actually in the OEOP office where I was able to meet one of my astronaut mentors, Dr. Yvonne Cagle. And yes, we're still in touch to this very day. I love her so dearly. But she was a person that I was able to see myself in such a way that I could see where this journey was going. I could see the impact, right, from the purpose that I was pursuing. I was designing these spacecraft for people like her. So whenever I'm in my office, whenever I'm on the manufacturing floor, it's so easy to get stuck in what you're working on because it's beautiful, it's massive, it's powerful, it's so cool. But why? Why is it being built? Why is it being produced? What are all of these millions and billions of dollars for? What is the purpose? It's for people like her that will be traveling in that spacecraft, exploring Moon, Mars, and beyond. My why, but also my mentor. And my mentor was able to impact my journey in ways that she can ever really understand. Because just by talking, just by speaking to me, she was actually impacting my journey, and she continues to do so to this day. So students, they need mentors. They really do. And it's not always a professor. As I mentioned, many of my mentors that impacted my journey were actually staff members. We're actually staff members. We're actually staff members. And that just goes to say that the impact that you guys have, it doesn't stop at the digital library. It doesn't stop at the textbooks. It doesn't stop at the awesome architecture that I love to walk into. It really starts and stops with you. It really does. So let's talk about skills and knowledge. So we've been talking about education. We've been talking about purpose. We've been talking about identifying that purpose, but let's talk about the skills and knowledge. So once these students have identified their purpose, they need to accumulate the skills and knowledge in order to act on that purpose. So for me, acting on the purpose was actually doing that internship, right? That was the action. The skills that came along with that and the knowledge was really developed through my coursework, but it really took off through experience in being in the workplace. OJT, on the job training, even as a rocket scientist, especially as a rocket scientist, is super important. And education can really provide students with these knowledges and skills, but being able to act on that, creating opportunities for them to explore what these skills can really do for the world is what really causes students to understand why it is their purpose. It's a full circle moment. It truly is. But all of these students who are walking around here today, they are our tomorrow. Literally, some of them are graduating or just graduated, and they are going out into the workforce to impact the world as we see it today and forever change whatever has been created already, because they will create something new. They will create something better. They will improve. And these are the students that you're interacting with each and every day. So I really can't stress enough the impact that you guys have. And as you can see here, I met my other mentor. Does anyone know who this is? Yep, you can just shout it out. Mae Jamison, exactly. So this woman, she's been my mentor since I decided to become an aerospace engineer. And I did cry when I met her. I cried a little bit before the picture, so my eyes are a little puffy. And I cried after. I hugged her too tight for her comfortability, but she had no idea the impact that she had on my journey. But this brings me to something really, really important. I've talked about all these things with education and purpose, but equity and inclusion. As you can see, I am an African-American woman. Now, you don't have to respond to this, but if I were to ask you what a rocket scientist looks like, would you think about my face? You don't have to say it out loud, but I'm going to say it for you. Nope. And you know what? When you look at the majority in the aerospace industry, they don't look like me. They really don't. They're mostly older, and they're usually male, And the diversity part we're still working on, okay? So that's definitely a big goal of what I do at Rocket with the Fletchers and for my day-to-day work. But equity and inclusion are vital for innovation. Imagine if we all came from the same background, we all came from the same environment. What will we be producing today? The same thing over and over and over. So when I talk about diversity, I'm not just talking about looks. I'm really talking about diversity of mind, because the mind, it's a product of its environment. So yes, different environments, right? But different experiences. It's so important. So we're talking about age, gender, race, everything diverse across board. We don't have to have the same face, the same experience, the same background, the same culture in one room. We can mix it up. And we have seen what happens when we do mix it up. The space program is known for all of the different innovations that have come out of it, from GPS to memory foam. And you know what? It started over half a century ago. If you were to look at all of the different innovations that have been happening over the past 50 years and think about when we did have segregation, you can kind of see a pivot point in our technological innovation history. We were moving like turtles because we were oppressing groups, right? And we weren't valuing diversity of mind. At this point, we are taking off. I hear that you guys have a session about Chat GPT, so artificial intelligence is definitely a hot topic right now, but that's just one of the examples of how we are taking off as a community of people because we're finally valuing diversity of mind. So equity and inclusion are so super valuable to creating a space where people are welcome and that they are able to contribute to innovation for today, for tomorrow, for years to come. It's so awesome. And the Space Launch System is definitely an example of that. But I will say that it becomes even more of an example as we do see all of the competitors around as well, how much innovation is truly taken off. It's not just NASA building rockets at this point, right? We have a lot of private companies that are doing their own thing, still sponsored by NASA as well, but they're doing their own things. There's individuals who are doing their own things. They're creating their own rockets. And we are innovating because we are valuing everyone. That's the key. So this brings me to the why behind Wonder Women of Science. So as some of you are holding this book, I do want you to realize that this book is a byproduct of these goals that I was just talking about, equity and inclusion. Each of these women, these 12 amazing scientists, some of whom are MIT alma maters, by the way, you know I had to include them in there. They all have different paths, different journeys, different backgrounds, different ethnicities. They're completely different. Yes, they all identify as a woman, but they are all so different. And they have all had their own set of challenges. They've all had their own sets of educational experiences, but each of them are doing amazing things in the field of STEM. Each and every one of them, whether they are nuclear scientists or mathematicians, statisticians trying to combat human trafficking, they all have their own lanes and they're doing it well. So that is the why behind Wonder Women of Science. I wanted to share their experiences. I wanted to share the diversity so that all of the readers out there can see themselves in one of them, all of them, some of them, and they can see what is possible. That the face of a rocket scientist may not always look like this, but we're out there, right? So that's the why behind Wonder Women of Science. So sense of purpose. So when students have a clear sense of purpose, they're more likely to be motivated and focused and ready to achieve their dreams. What was able to attach to me so closely and so fiercely to allow me to stick on to this dream for, I'm telling my age, for about 17 years. I started at 11. I'm 28 years old right now. I have been working on becoming a rocket scientist for about a decade. Now I'm doing it. What is that factor that allows me to continue doing it? Am I stubborn? I don't think so. I think that I'm passionate. I think that I have purpose attached to what I do each and every day. But having that sense of purpose, understanding the why behind what I do, understanding the why behind what you do, understanding the why behind what students do, allows you to have a sense of purpose to then provide the necessary motivation to get you through each and every day, but to get you to that next dream, that next goal. So, what does that look like? For me, I told you my why, right? It's multiple things, but I told you. People. It all comes back to people. So Dr. Yvonne Cagle, Dr. Mae Jemison, they're big pieces of the why. People like them who are traveling on these spacecraft are the why of what I do, my sense of purpose. I'm not just creating these super cool, humongous looking vehicles that I am very excited about. I'm creating vehicles that will literally transport us to our next phase of humankind, right? We're talking about setting foot on Mars, people. That is not a small feat at all. But in order to do that, it requires the safety and the quality in order to get us there. Sense of purpose, motivation. What drives you? Just marinate on that. Think about that. And for me, I talked about this people, it all goes back to people, but serving the community. So this is actually a photo from MIT News back in what? Maybe 2017. So this is Black Students Union right here, leadership team at the time. And this was a big part of what I believe I did to serve the MIT community at the time. I mentioned that we created a list of recommendations for MIT leadership. This list, it wasn't just like, bigger budgets for cool events. It was, okay, I would like to see more representation in mental health so that when I go to the mental health office, I can have a more safe space because I can finally see someone who at least kind of resembles me. I can see more women. I can see more African American women, Latinas, XYZ. I can see a little bit more diversity so that when I walk into a space, I can have some sort of relation that allows me to open up more, right? So that was a part of that list. But having those recommendations, those actions is what was allowing us to make changes for the next generation of students to come. Sense of purpose, doing something, but also giving back, right? So being an aerospace engineer, being a major in aerospace engineering, providing resources for the aerospace engineers of tomorrow, it's always going back to the why and finding a way to give back into the community as much as possible. That is what also drives you to have a constant thrust. Rocket pun alert. And you know what? I was serving the community and then something happened. Something weird happened. So believe it or not, I used to be an introvert. I was, seriously. And for me, I was just doing what I needed to do to get through MIT. You probably hear that phrase a lot. I was doing what I needed to do, and I was giving back to the community in small ways. But then something happened. In April 2017, I was invited to this event for thousands of children who did awesome things in their community. I'm talking about organizing fundraisers for their entire city for students to be able to receive books, receive school supplies. People who, I say people, they were children, but people today who are doing amazing things in their community. So this shy Tiera Fletcher decided, well, Tiera Gwynn at the time, decided to say yes to this event. And, I'm on stage with this hot pink blazer. And I did dance onto the stage because I was just so excited about these students. I was just swallowing my shyness in order to fulfill the purpose that I had for that day. So, this is just to say that sense of purpose can drive you to do some crazy things for the betterment of the people around you. So, we're still pretty much on the sense of purpose train. So I mentioned my husband, Myron Fletcher, and Rocket with the Fletchers. There's a logo. Faith, love, and rockets. So we do all sorts of things in order to push what it means to have a sense of purpose, giving back to the community. So we teach, we mentor, we do all of these different things, write books if we have to. And we even go on television shows where you're launching Christmas trees thousands of feet in the air. So that's what this picture is from. It's called Rocket Around the Christmas Tree. I know. It was crazy. I had just given birth, oh my gosh, to my second born. This was literally 5 weeks after. So I was moving like a turtle building these rockets, but it happened. And it was just another way of giving back to the community. If kids can watch us be crazy and launch these snowballs and Christmas trees and Santa Clauses into the air, then so be it, whatever it takes. So follow that path that's presented in front of you in order to act on your purpose. Do that, even if you have to launch Christmas trees. So all of these different students that you're impacting, the people around you that you're impacting, you are impacting society, right? And this impact are truly impacting people who are going to change the world. We're talking about all of the different technological creators of the next century, right? We are talking about people who are changing the world. You, the students, people around you, changing the world. So the impact that you have on society is not something to neglect. It's not something to undervalue. You have to understand that your individual impact plays a huge role in the whole play of things around you. I know that just sounds so poetic, doesn't it? Just like, oh, philosophical, but it's true. Honestly, it is true. Each of the actions that you make today, as you are following your purpose, as you are impacting the purpose of others, you are impacting how we see society tomorrow. And the impact of education, it just can't really be overstated, can it? No, it cannot, because this impact can really help students develop critical thinking skills to allow us to reach our next destination. This goes back to Mars. These are NASA posters recruiting people for Mars. No, seriously, they are. It's saying Mars explorers wanted, so it's true. Teaching on Mars, building on Mars, having that experience play into the next phase of humanity. What? These critical thinking skills allow us to analyze the possibilities of tomorrow, because as you create this safe space to produce all of these different skills, obtain all of these different pieces of knowledge, and develop this sense of purpose, it drives people to do amazing things, including going on Mars. If you're interested, it's not too late. We should be setting foot in Mars in the next decade or so. Not to change your path, I'm just trying to bring your path across the solar system. Just saying. And talking about mobility, education truly does promote social mobility. So I've been talking about equity and inclusion. I've been talking about resources and exposure. So education does allow us to mobilize as a society as a whole, right? As a whole, not just certain segments of the community, but also the underserved and underrepresented pieces of the community as well. Providing education tools, resources, knowledge to all around you equitably allows us to move as a social society. So I graduate. Yay, Tiera graduated. Woo! No, it's okay. But I walked into the doors of MIT with hesitation. Remember that? Now look, I'm smiling in front of Kresge. I'm about to graduate. Just an excited Tiera day. But this is only the beginning. I'm taking all of those different tools that I was just telling you about, and I'm bringing it out into the world full throttle. No longer an intern, full time now. I am impacting society. I have developed that sense of purpose. I've obtained the skills and knowledge. And now it's time to make an impact. So I mentioned that I started as a structural design and analysis engineer. I kid you not, nobody could take pictures in this building in Huntsville. But there was a video that I did, and somehow they managed to get immediate approval to take pictures inside of the building. So I did a screenshot of the video. It's right here. And if you're interested in watching it, it's called The Female Planet, but this is the actual building. Wink, wink. But in Huntsville, Alabama, that is where we design, analyze, plan, procure parts for the Space Launch System and many other rockets in history. Rocket City is what they call little old Huntsville, Alabama, and it has developed quite a lot over the years. I kid you not, it's not just a little Alabama town. And for me, I always said that I would never go to Alabama, but I ended up right there, my next door neighbor from Georgia. And I played a role in producing the Space Launch System, which is a part of Artemis 1, right? So the Artemis program as a whole is made in order to bring humanity back to the moon, onto Mars and beyond. We've been to the moon before, why are we going back? I know that's the question you're thinking. But we've only explored 3% of the moon so far. We have a lot more seeing to do, but also we have a lot more planning to do if we're trying to get to Mars. We are planning to go back to the moon, create an habitat, if you will. We're going to have what's called the Gateway, NASA Gateway. It's very similar, ideally to what you think about with the International Space Station, but it's going to be in lunar orbit. It's going to allow us to have multiple visits to the moon and create these spaces where we can really test out what it means for a human to stay on a planet for long amounts of time. Round trip to Mars, this is not your typical flight, people. It is about 2 years round trip with current technology. So it takes about 6 to 7 months to travel there. You have to wait for the orbits to align most efficiently, and then you can travel back to Earth. So it's not a short trip, and it does require dire planning, and it requires that safety and quality that I was just telling you about. So I'm able to say that I was actually designing and analyzing parts of the very rocket that did launch most recently back in November. And you know what? Shortly after beginning my career journey, I then realized that position, it wasn't really satisfying that portion of purpose for people, right? I mentioned that before. So what did I do about that? I did something. I had to burn my engines. Everybody say, burn my engines. Oh, I love to hear that. But what that means is that in space, you literally have to burn engines in order to shift your trajectory to transition into another orbit, if you will. So when you're talking about burning your engines, you're talking about making a shift. I had to burn my engines, make a shift so that I can satisfy my technical purpose of aerospace, but also that purpose of people. So I heard that there were some opportunities to go to NOLA, to New Orleans, Louisiana. Does anyone know what happens in New Orleans with rockets? You know what? Not even the locals know, but there's the NASA Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans, Louisiana, and that is where rockets have been being built for over half a century, folks. And it's an amazing facility. It is so amazing. So I decided to make a transition to support the build of the Space Launch System, the very Space Launch System rocket that I was just designing and analyzing parts for. I am now helping to put it together. I'm seeing the pieces from 3D to fully in my hand. Literally, I'm touching the parts. So I have to go ahead and show you how this facility looks like, right? So we're looking at the core stage of the Space Launch System. The Boeing Company is the prime contractor of the core stage. The core stage consists of 212 feet of the Space Launch System. So it's a mighty, mighty piece. And it includes various segments. So let's just start from the top. It does include the liquid hydrogen tank, right? And it also includes the liquid hydrogen tank. So smaller tank to bigger tank. And then we go over to the engine section of the rocket. And as you can imagine, that is a very critical piece of the rocket, right? It kind of makes it a rocket. That is the section that I was crawling into each and every day to verify components, to work with technicians, to close the gap between what I used to be, the structural design engineers and structural analysis engineers, and the technicians so that they can actually assemble these parts together. to make something as massive and beautiful as this. Oh my goodness. So I would put on my PPE suit and I would literally see my purpose unfolding, coming into play. It was beautiful. But then I became pregnant. I could no longer crawl into the engine section of the rocket. Yeah, I had to literally crawl and get on my belly. So that was a no-go. I had to burn my engines again, folks. And it wasn't a big burn this time, not too much power required. I just had to do a desk job. So I was still fulfilling the requirements of closing the gap between the technicians and the engineers that I was just working with in Huntsville in order to make this assembly happen. Talk about that. Wow. Journeys, I tell you. But then I realized that I had some more things to do, right? My dream wasn't over at this point. I was, of course, doing what I love to do. I'm watching the rocket being built, and it's amazing. But I realized that I want to grow more. I want to do more. I want to learn more. So it was time to really burn my engines. I went to San Antonio, Texas. Now, as you can see, I can't show you the product that I worked on in San Antonio, Texas, but it was one of the highlights of my career. It was something other than the Space Launch System, and it was a very valuable aircraft for the world. And I was a structural design engineer. I was the only structural design engineer at the site, so it was an automatic leadership opportunity. Talk about putting your hopes, dreams, and passions into the atmosphere. It was just woo, everything at once. So I had to work with multiple different disciplines, bringing it all together and doing all the different actions that was required of my position. And it was amazing. And as you can see, I expanded the family, had another baby, second born there. And it was just all happening. I was leading, I was doing all of these fantastic things, but I realized that I needed to fulfill my purpose of people. And in order to really do that, I really wanted to learn more, remember? So, more than on the job training, I wanted to strategically go through a formal education. So, I decided to get my master's of engineering management from Duke University. So, that's where that came in. And that allowed me to have the resources, the tools that I needed to better lead the teams that were a part of the Boeing Company inside of BDS, or Boeing Defense and Space. We talked about mites. I had to talk about mites some more. As I was fulfilling my purpose and whatnot, remember I was talking about giving back to the community. I really wanted students to understand what aerospace engineering is, but I really wanted them to understand that they could do it too. So that is the reason of why I teach for mites, and I've been doing it for several years now. It is a great program for students to learn about different disciplines and really act it out, do all the different projects. So I'm so happy to be a part of that program. I just had to include it just so I could say that right there. The moment that you all have been waiting for. So I decided to return to the Space Launch System program as a configuration management and product integration engineer. Let's shorten that. Product lifecycle engineer. It's equatable. That's fine. And I did it at a very cool time. It was the time at which we were prepping the rocket to be transitioned to Florida, Kennedy Space Center, for launch. So we had to do this critical gate review for the customer, AKA NASA, and it was called FCA PCA, or Functional Configuration Audit / Physical Configuration Audit. Let's make that a little bit easier. We're just verifying that the parts are in the right place, and that it was a design and as-built parts as they should be, and that's it. And I was a part of that. I led the team to do that. So I just walked back in the SLS. I was able to lead the team to do that. And we received approval. Yay! Woo! Go team, go team. And we were able to send Artemis 1 space launch system down to Kennedy Space Center for this very momentous occasion that happened November 16th, 2022. You know, I traveled to Florida to try and catch it before I gave birth. I gave birth October 24th, 2022. It was a scrub, but I was able to hold my newborn and look up to the sky and watch it fly over Maui. So that wasn't too bad. So let's play this momentous occasion. There is some audio. Oh, there it is.
TLS is go for ALS.
And we are go for ALS. The Space Launch System is now counting down to liftoff of Orion on its maiden voyage to the moon. Testing the ability to steer the rocket into space. Launch team can no longer cycle the count. Sound suppression water now flowing under the ML. And here we go. Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiate. 7, 6, 5. Four-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Back to the moon and down.
It's just so beautiful. I get choked up every time I see it. But listen, that is what I worked on for the majority of my career. Not too shabby. So now I'm working on another program that I can't really share much with you, but I work at the Maui Space Surveillance Complex in Maui, Hawaii. I'm currently the modernizations program manager for the site and also the project engineer for the site. So my hands are kind of full on most days, but I work with a group of talented engineers from various skills, and they are just incredible. We're a pretty small site, but we're there. And we still work in the space realm of things. And it's a pretty cool gig. It is. And you can see I expanded my family again. So that's pretty neat. Those are my 3 sons and my husband. And blasting off to purpose each and every day. Thank you.